I have listened to hundreds of products, and sometimes when they come in, I'm not all that excited nor optimistic. But this little thing surprised me. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about this cheap, little, awesome hi-fi device. If you are new here, please consider subscribing and liking this video. I do this for a living, so it really helps me out when people subscribe to the channel. It helps me get more sponsors to keep this channel independent, and it also helps me get more products in for review. We have over 700 videos, DACs, amps, speakers, turntables, headphones occasionally. So thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe. This is the SMSL M300. You may be saying to yourself, M300, hasn't there been like 3 of those? Yes, this is the 3rd, and it's not denoted on the front that this is any different. So anyway, this is the M300SE from SMSL. A lot of times I just grab stuff and start listening to it. I have no idea about the price. I make assumptions about the price by how something's made, but I've had about 5 of these kind of form factor DAC or DAC amps come through. This is a DAC, but it's also a headphone amp. It also, well, we'll get into that later. Anyway, when I unboxed this, because I unbox a lot of things at the same time, I pulled it out, I'm like, okay, another one of these. And it kind of sat on the table for a while until I turned it on. Then things changed a little bit for me. Let's talk about the specs. Specifications. First and foremost, this thing is little. So let's look at it compared to an A&W root beer, 0 sugar, slightly taller than an A&W root beer. This is it compared to a 20-ounce can of Dr. Pepper, bottle of Dr. Pepper. I don't know the difference between cans and bottles. And finally, the most important size comparison, this is a key. The one thing that I really liked about this is it does not use a Saber DAC chip. It does not use an AKM DAC chip. It does not use a Burr Brown DAC chip. It uses a Cirrus Logic. Here's the cool thing. It's not just a DAC chip, but it's also an amplifier built into the same chip. In a nutshell, the DAC chip is also integrated with the amplifier chip. I was so interested that I actually looked up the spec sheet on the chipset itself. Really cool stuff. So the chipset is the CS43131 with carefully designed circuitry, achieves an unprecedented 0.00. I don't even know how many. There's multiple zeros, 13%. It's got an XMOS XU316. If you know why that's good, pop it in the comments. Supports up to 30-bit, 768, DSD, all the good stuff, and has MQA decoding, which is going to be useful right now. Maybe not in the near future. Has Bluetooth, independent clock, ultra-low clock jitter, ultra-low phase noise, all that good stuff. And it's got a built-in power supply chip. Here's a good one. The use of a large number of audio-specific audiophile resistors and capacitors. Audiophile resistors and capacitors. Very good. I would make fun of that a lot more if this didn't sound so good. And it says it has a fully balanced design. 6.35 millimeter headphone jack on the front, as well as a 4.4 Pentagon. And it comes with a remote. Hi-Fi Express sent this in to me. And when I did some research, it's not, they gave me an Amazon link, but when you go to that Amazon link, it says currently unavailable. So it's available on their website. They didn't tell me to say anything. They didn't pay me to say anything, and I don't have any affiliate relationship with them. So, Hi-Fi Express, you're going to take the A train to Music Happy Town. It's one of the stops on the Hi-Fi Express. What's on the back? On the back, not a ton of real estate. As you can see up at the top, you have a pair of balanced outputs. And then between there, kind of like the nose, is a 3.5 millimeter output. I don't love that. I wish there was an RCA output, but there isn't. So if you want to use single-ended, you're going to have to get a 3.5 millimeter to a pair of RCA outputs. It's all the same, just a little bit less convenient because not everybody has a 3.5 to 2 RCA thing laying around. Little Y connector. Underneath there, you have your inputs, which includes a coaxial, an optical, a Bluetooth antenna receiver thing, which is not plugged in because I don't particularly care for Bluetooth, and then a 5-volt power on top, also an auxiliary power below. I think the reason that they do that is because if you're running this off of maybe an iPad or a Chromebook or something, I don't know, sometimes the source device powering this does not have enough juice if it's battery powered itself. I only tested this plugged into the wall. I did not play around with a whole bunch of mobile devices to see if I can make this work. With the inclusion of basically a secondary power jack, I'm assuming that this can be driven off of a mobile device. How well it can be driven obviously is in question, otherwise they wouldn't include another power input. But it's kind of cool that that's possible. It's kind of cool that this is 5 volt. Most of the time, with a headphone amp that has any amounts of power or any capabilities, it needs to be like 10 to 16 volts. So the fact that they're doing this with a 5 volt power supply is pretty special. Let's talk about how it sounds and the power. Power ratings. It's nebulously ambiguous. They don't really tell you what the power is. There is a little blurb where it talks about how it automatically adjusts to the impedance of your headphones to put out the most efficient amount of power. And while I think that's kind of a joke, in practice it actually worked. So I tried the Hfi Edition XS, planar magnetic, not super difficult to drive, not as bad as like the Dan Clark Aeon RTs, which are like closed back, which are like 13 ohm. And then I put the very easy to drive Meze 109 Pros on there. Super easy to drive. You can drive those off anything. The Edition XS needs a little bit of juice, and the Dan Clarks need a lot of juice. I didn't really feel like it had an issue driving any of those. I have heard the Dan Clarks be more dynamic off of other amplifiers, but usually they're pretty juicy, and a lot of times they're like Class A, or basically not on a chip, that's for sure. I've never had a 5 volt headphone amplifier be able to drive the Dan Clarks at all. It wasn't the best, but it definitely was passable. Oh, I forgot to tell you, this is currently on sale for $106. And even though it may be a website you're not familiar with, you can get it shipped from the US. So there's a little drop down menu, click on that. Ships from, click on United States. So it can ship from the United States, the UK, Japan, or France, or China. This thing sounds really spectacular. Balanced, the imaging was otherworldly. I listened to There Will Be Time by Mumford & Sons and Baba Mal. At the beginning of that song, they're moving around music stands or doing something. But it's kind of cool because it's like not a perfect recording, and there's ambient noise going on within the studio that they recorded in. And I'd never heard whatever clicking, whatever they're bumping around at the beginning, I never heard that. And it was like low and perfect. It was in the middle of my head. It was really something. And the cleanliness on top does not feel clinical. So there's a lot of treble, a lot of information, but it doesn't seem digital, compressed. It doesn't seem unnatural. It's just really good. I would choose this over more expensive SMSL DACs with the AKM 4493S. With the exception, well, even the SU1. So I just reviewed the SU1, it's $70. But it's just a DAC. I think this, either coupled with the amplifier in here or the DAC chip, it's all integrated, so it is what it is. I think this sounds better than the SU1. Granted, it's $25 more on sale, but you're also getting a headphone amplifier, and you're getting balanced output, and you're getting a remote control. Bass was solid, dynamic, really good. A lot of times if I get something that's a bit exciting or thin on the Edition XS from a Hfi, it's super sibilant. Now I listen to Alanis Morissette, King of Pain. Basically the entire MTV Unplugged record is sibilant as heck. King of Pain though, it was sibilant, but not nearly as bad as I've heard it before on the Edition XS. On the Meze 109 Pro, it sounded like the typical Meze 109 Pro, which is a bit warm. I went into the Wii app because I had the Wii connected into this via optical. So I went into the Wii app, used the EQ, and I brought down 500 and 250 just a titch. Cleaned up the mid-range a little bit, and then I popped up 8K and then 16K, 8K maybe half a dB, 16K maybe 2 dB, but my hearing isn't like super solid above around 12K anyway, so sometimes I need a little bit of help in that department. But the Hfi Edition XS, I just left it flat. It sounded great. Let's talk about what it sounded like connected to some speakers. So I had my Apple TV going into my regular TV, which I think is a Hisense or something like that. Taking the optical out into this and then running that into the topping LA90D, which is a discrete amplifier, AB amplifier. Even though somebody argued with me in the comments about it, saying it was a Class D amplifier. It's not. It's Class AB. Anyway, it sounded incredible. Granted, the LA90 discrete from topping is a really good amplifier, really good sounding. I don't know if it's a really good amplifier anymore, because guess what it's doing now? It's popping and clicking. So when I have no source going into it, or basically the source turned off or muted, there's like a hiss and a pop and some crackle going on, like a vintage receiver. I guess that's a feature, right? You're getting the vintage receiver experience with a brand new component that pops and hisses every now and again. So I'm going to actually test it on some different outlets and stuff and see if I'm going crazy. I had the Q Acoustics 5020 hooked up to it. I'm not super happy with the topping LA90 right now. LA90D discrete. Sounded great initially. Guess what's happening? Someone's throwing some bacon on the frying pan. Anyway, open sounding, very low noise floor. And when coupled with the right amplifier, and that goes without saying, I think this is a very neutral DAC. If anything, I don't think it's thin. I don't think it's overblown on top. Mids are clear. Like, I have zero complaints or criticisms of the sonic kind of curve or the flavor or vibe of this. None. I will say this though, when I was listening to the Hfi Edition XS and I really started to crank the volume, it did get a little bit much on top. It wasn't sibilant, it wasn't harsh, it wasn't unnatural. It just felt like maybe some of the top end was coming forward. But that was also at levels that I would not be able to sustain listening at those levels. So at comfortable levels, brilliant. I'm really legitimately blown away. And I'm blown away because it's $106. And this is a no-nonsense component. There's no filter roll-offs. There's no EQ. The screen is laughably tiny, although it does work. So I guess that's all you need it. But if you're putting this across the room, like if you're going to use this on a vintage receiver or integrated amp or anything else that you want to get a little bit better DAC, you're not going to be able to read the display. And I like that. I just like the fact that it's a DAC. I mean, they probably didn't even need to include a display. But it does tell you what sample rate you're getting. So, like if you're getting 44.1 or 2492 or 192, it's going to display on here. Now you have to have a source that will do that, and the Wii will do that. Really blown away by this product. Pleasantly surprised, and I love it when this happens because a lot of times I have zero expectations, or I actually have a bit of a biased expectation that this is going to be exactly like everything else that came through, slightly overpriced. And this is neither of those. This DAC chip, the CS41, well, it's really not a DAC chip, a DAC amp chip, CS4131, really good. And I think if it's included on other things, like they can make super small form factor products with that combo chip, make something really good. This is really good. $106. I mean, I think this might be the best value DAC headphone amplifier that you can get. As a straight up just DAC, it sounds really good. And at $106, outside of the SU1, if you want balanced for another $25, $26, this is it. This is really, really impressive to me. I wish it was more widely available. I wish it was available on Amazon. So the only place you can get it is Hfi Express. I think that's the only place I could find it. So I'll link that in the description. I will link the link they gave me for Amazon, but when I went to it, there's nothing available. It says currently unavailable. I don't know if this is kind of a one-off collaboration that they did with Hfi Express, but I can't find this product anywhere else. Anyway, brilliant product. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Amazon Music, Tidal, or Rune. Links in the description. Click sign up. They have a trial. Even if you quit, I get a couple of dollars. You can also use the other links in the description. Those are affiliate links, which means if you click and you buy, I get a commission, but it doesn't cost you any more. So it's a great way to support the channel. You can also use the thanks button down at the bottom of the video. You can buy me a cup of coffee, put a little bit of money in the tip jar. But don't feel compelled to buy me anything. You can also sign up for my Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night, we have Patreon-only Zooms, Patreon-only Discord, Patreon-only Facebook group. Finally, you can just like and subscribe to this channel. So, don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen, maybe through your new SMSL M300SE, and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Chief Audio Man.